Hi, welcome back to It's About the Story, where we try to help you create and deliver a great investment story and presentation. And this is module 3, where we start talking about creating your presentation. So, with that, let's get right to it. A number of years ago, I worked on a Department of Energy project for the Great Lakes Energy Institute at Case Western Reserve University. The woman I worked for on the project, Diane Anderson, came to me and asked me a question that had nothing to do with grid level energy storage, which the project was about, when she asked me for a great template for a venture capital presentation. It turned out that one of the Case professors was interested in starting a company with a new technology and wanted a kind of a quick hit way to do that. And I get that all the time. I have entrepreneurs who come to me and they ask me for templates. They ask me for a template that is kind of a check the box and a fill in the blank, kind of a form style thing. And so if I'm going to give it to you, so here it is on video for the first time. And the fact of the matter is, I don't have a template for you because it really has to be about a story. Now, those templates do exist, they are out there. Some entrepreneurial development organizations, when they have money to dole out, will sort through all the initial applications using a form style, and it is good. It kind of asks you to do this in paragraph style. There are some VCs that have a way that they want to see the thing presented. And if you're presenting to them or if you're sending a slide deck to them, if they want it that way, you do it the way that they want it. But in general, you need to have a presentation that is compelling and is built around a story. And based on this concept, I came across some research done by these two women for Harvard Business School, where they talked about how leaders can influence, teach, and inspire using stories. And I love the quote because it really says that it works because it parallels the way our brains work. And I love the second one, that facts. So facts are, what are the benefits of your product? How much money do you need? What have you done with IP? How great is your team? So facts come in as data points, but stories connect those data point dots, which is just great. And then when you hear a story, you tend to value it more and you attach emotions to it. So I'm a big believer that stories are definitely the way to go. And actually, some other research done by Jennifer Aker at Stanford Graduate School of Business said that people are as much as 22 times more likely to remember facts if they're connected to a story. And it makes sense. If you could think of your own life, you've seen this before. So let's say that you're asked to make a VC presentation and you're a little bit nervous, but then you say, well, what do I have to put into this? So you, of course, just based on some of the other modules that you've already looked at, I hope, you need your technology and value done in this quote discovery channel format. You've got to do some market analysis. You got to go over your business model because that is something that really makes a difference. And then to kind of bolster those, you probably want to talk about some examples of why your product benefits the customer and how it does that. You need a description of your IP and your IP protection. If you have customer traction and any of that traction that you have, you need to talk about. But then we're not really done because we also need to talk about the team, which is real important. So why should you invest in me and my team, and why we're likely to make this success? And you need to talk about your advisors, particularly if they're real well skilled and well known in the industry you're working in. You need at least to summarize your product development timeline. You'll have to give them some basic financials, and then talk about how much capital you need now and how much you're going to need in the future. And you might have to do that in 15 minutes, which makes it really hard. It reminds me of a great quote, and that's that I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. That's been variously attributed to Cicero, Pascal, and Mark Twain. Let's go with Mark Twain on the far right. But the shorter letter, the shorter presentations are just more difficult. You have to summarize. You don't have the luxury of telling them everything that you know. And the first thing you may say to yourself is, how are we going to do that? And it is not that easy, but it can be done. So creating that compelling, compact presentation is difficult, but it's worth it because once you've done it, they force you to answer the very key questions, which will be just valuable to you in many, many cases. So they have that lasting value. You're going to be able to create your elevator pitch. And if you need to expand it to the longer pitch, it's not really that difficult if you can create that compelling short pitch. In a question and answer session, you'll be in great shape. So let's talk about creating your story. And the first thing I want you to do is to imagine that in creating this, you are creating a new TV series. If we've all had the situation where we've seen a great series and we binge watch it because it's just so compelling that we want to see the next episode. Well, this needs to be the same thing for the venture capitalist. The venture capitalist needs to have an experience where he or she says, wow, I really want to see more and hear more about this technology in this company. This is exciting. One of the first things that I recommend that you do is what I call engaging with friendlies. Now, you know the term if you're a fan of soccer. A friendly is what most of us call an exhibition game for football or basketball. But I would describe a friendly as somebody who's willing to help and listen and give you honest feedback. And that could be somebody who knows the technology that you're working in, or it could be somebody who knows the market or is a potential customer type, or just someone who's above average IQ and is willing to help listen and give you that honest feedback. Doing this just helps you understand how an audience might react because as you are talking to him or her, you explain your slides, you explain your story to them with no slides and follow the path of their questions. What is their mental path? Where do they go? So you're kind of multitasking because you're telling the story, but you're also analyzing a little bit. And then what you want to do is build that story or build that story out around the path that you see. So the questions that they ask are likely the ones that you should address proactively, or at the very least, be ready to answer. But I would say address them proactively. And then ask yourself, what is she getting? What's being absorbed and what's not. So if something is confusing and difficult to explain and the friendly is not getting it, well, you should fix that if it's important. If it's not that important, remove it. The next thing you want to do is boil it down so that this is to really get to the fundamental questions that you're trying to answer. So, what is the problem you solve? What's different about you? Why is the market large and growing? What's great about the team? How would you use the investment and how much money that you need? You really should have 20-second answers to these questions. And you want to tell stories within your story. It keeps things real. It keeps the audience engaged. It enhances your perceived credibility because when you're telling stories, you're more comfortable and they just feel better. So you'll notice that I threw it. I sort of stood in the story about the person I worked with at the Great Lakes Energy Institute. Part of that is because the stories within the story matter. So it can be, for example, an anecdote that pertains to the piece of your story. Uh, uh, like the one I used to begin this module. It might be an interesting thing that you throw in as an example of a customer, or talk about how a customer is using the product. It could be how you discovered the technology, if it was sort of a surprise, which happens in some cases. In other cases, I've seen it be very, very effective for people to use a fictional story that really helps the audience understand the benefits you provide. I had a company that had a product that helped people care for elderly. And so she did a great job of describing her Aunt Mamie and what she was dealing with. But she also described Jane, and Jane who was providing the care. And it was completely made up, so fictional story, but a great way to explain what the product did, particularly when in a software enabling product like that. And then the last thing I'll talk about is the short pitches. You need to have short pitches, you have to use them, and you can build on them. So the first is your elevator pitch, and that's the proverbial one where the most important person, the VC who can make the decision, walks in the elevator with you. What do you tell him or her in the 1 minute ride before they get off and walk away from you? So that they say, wow, yeah, here's my card. I'd like to talk to you some more. The 2 minute, which I call the cocktail party pitch, is a little bit longer, obviously twice as much time. But if you think about it, anybody who's a fan of Mad Men know that Joan is not going to listen to him for very long. But if he can say the right things, she might say, "Yeah, this sounds interesting." I'm actually now working on a pitch coaching assignment where I coach all of the entrepreneurs in the contest, and they have to do a 2-minute pitch that sets up their 28-minute Q&A session. And it's challenging to put that 2-minute pitch together, but every one of them that are doing it now and that did it 2 years ago have told me that that 2-minute pitch was so valuable to them. So it is worth working on these if you can. So that concludes module 3. I hope it worked for you. And the next module is what order works. So even though we don't have templates, there are some, you certainly have to think about the order and how you put that presentation together. And for a little bit more of a look ahead after that, we will go back to those core topics that we talked about creating your story and give you a lot more detail on what you need to think about as you put slides together and put your presentation together. As you know, I do offer a service called Perfect Pitch, which is one-to-one. So it is uses all these concepts, but it is very, very different and very, very helpful. So if it's something that's interesting to you, go to leveragent.net to understand a little bit more on how you could possibly do this. And if you like it, subscribe and give us a thumbs up. And thanks again for listening. And I look forward to talking to you in Module 4.